Hello, this problem that I'm going to go through here is the 2005 Form B AP Statistics problem number 1. Let me pull this up a little bit too close. All right, so let's get right into it. You'll see that right away I'm seeing this stem and leaf plot, but it doesn't have the numbers in it. So that's kind of one of the first things you kind of look at and recognize, but let's read it and see what they say. So the graph below displays the scores of 32 students on a recent exam. Scores on this exam range from 64 to 95. So I know right away, like one of these data points is going to be 64, and then one of these would be the 95 would be the top one, right? So 64 to 95. Right away I'm thinking I know the range, but I really don't know anything else. Okay, but what do they want? So describe the shape of the distribution. Whenever you see describe the shape or describe the distribution, you're talking about the big three. Big three. We need center, we need shape, we need spread. All right, so let's go through them. The center, I would say the center, we don't know exactly. We really don't, because they don't give us the numbers, but we can count. We know there's 32 numbers. So that means I know my median is in between the 16th and the 17th number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So my median is right in there somewhere. That's the center. So I don't really know what the number is. It could be, like usually they'll say these are the lower 60s, these are the upper 60s, lower 70s, upper 70s, right? So I'm assuming this is like in the upper 80s, right? We don't know what it is, but we can say upper 80s. So that's something I would say. Centers at the upper 80s. Then for the shape, you should say, now this, normally on these kind of things, it's just a good idea to kind of think, well, it's what if I were to turn it, right? If you turn it sideways, then this kind of looks like a histogram. Lower numbers on the left, larger numbers on the right, and maybe that helps you out. That's really all you're doing, is just kind of thinking about what's that look like if it were sideways. So this is skewed. You can see that the peaks are over here. It's unimodal. It's not bimodal. It's unimodal, but it is skewed to the left. So I'd say something like that. I wouldn't say left, obviously, because now it's not left anymore, is it? It's up and down. But I wouldn't use those either. It's easier to just state the numbers. So in this case, I might say it's unimodal, and it's skewed to the lower numbers. Skewed to the lower numbers. That's the best way to say that. Okay, so, and then the spread, you could go ahead and calculate right here, subtract those two, and get 31 as your range, and use that as your spread. If you wanted, you could kind of estimate the IQR maybe a little. Maybe not a good idea because we don't know the numbers, but that's something you could do if you were forced to kind of in the question to come up with an IQR or something. You can always count. I know there's 32 numbers, so you cut that into quarters. That's 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I know right there is my Q1, and then I got that, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's my Q3. So my interquartile range goes somewhere between the upper 70s to the lower 90s. So that's like a little more than 10 to 15. It's not going to be any more than that. So you could say IQR is about 10 to 15 approximately, right? So that's kind of an estimation a little bit. But the range because you know the minimum and the maximum. So that would cover the big three. We did the center, we did the shape, and we did the spread. Now, looking at the scoring guide, before we go to the other questions, let's take a quick peek at the scoring guide. You'll see that all they require, and for this problem, was the skewed to the lower values, right? The distribution is skewed to the lower values. Honestly, though, I wouldn't count on this being the case all the time. If they say describe the distribution, you should always have those three: center, shape, and spread. And make sure you use context and stuff like that. That's what you really should be doing. That's how you describe a set. So you want to do your best to cover all three of those. Okay, let's go into the part B there and see what they have to say. Okay, so in order to motivate her students, she wants to report that overall the class's performance on the exam was high. So which summary statistic, the mean or the median, should the instructor use to report the overall exam performance was high? So which one's going to be higher, right? She wants to report one of these. And this is one of those ways that you can kind of manipulate. It's not really lying. You're not lying. You're telling the truth. But you can manipulate the way people think just by which statistic you report. If I report the mean, is it going to look better? If I report the median, is it going to look better? Well, what they want you to say is, and what you're supposed to notice is that if this is skewed to the lower numbers, the median is going to be less. Like I know this is where my median is. I know my mean is going to be less than this. The mean is less than the median, right? So I don't know what it is exactly because I don't know the numbers, but I know the mean will be less than the median if your data set is skewed to the lower numbers. So immediately, if I want the higher number, I'm going to want to use the median. So you just want to say that. And let's see what they said on the scoring guide. So they said, since the distribution is skewed, the mean will be pulled in that direction. So the instructor should report the median if she wants to motivate her students. She wants to, show that she has a high number of students, right? In those upper values. All right. Part C, the mid-range is defined as the maximum plus the minimum divided by 2. I've seen this more than once. This comes up, I wouldn't say a lot, but it shows up. It's kind of a different way of getting center. So compute this value on the preceding page, and then they ask you, is that number considered a measure of center or spread? This is a center, right? So let's calculate maximum. You take your 95, add your minimum, which is your 64, add those together, divide by 2, right? So 159 divided by 2, and you get a number. And then you will, so after that, you have to decide whether it's the measure of center or spread. So when you take a maximum and a minimum, that's like a lower bound and an upper bound, and you're dividing by 2, you're doing an average of those. So an average between the top and the bottom is the middle. So that would be a measure of center. And you have to explain that. You can't just say, it's the center, right? They said explain, so you need to kind of explain. It's the maximum, the minimum. When you divide by 2, that's an average. So an average is kind of in the middle, right? It's not the same as the mean, and it's not the same as the median either. It's just a different way of getting to the center of a data set. Let's see what they said. So same idea, yep. Maximum, here's your number, 64 plus 95 divided by 2, you get 79.5. And then they said this is the center. So why? Well, same thing that we said. You got the upper tail, the upper extreme. We got the lower tail is the lower extreme. And by averaging those two values, you create something that is halfway, which is a center, right? So just some kind of explanation why that makes sense that it's a center, and that's good enough. Okay, that's just a number 1 problem. So it's supposed to be quick and I wouldn't say easy, but not difficult by any means. And so one of these problems should have taken you definitely less than 12 minutes, maybe even like 8 minutes, right? 10 at the most, I would say. So make sure when you're doing these type of AP problems that you're timing yourself and trying it on your own first. And then go and look at the answer, the scoring guidelines, and look at the solutions and see what you did wrong and make corrections. All right?